You are not crazy, oversensitive, dramatic, or confused by accident. Someone is manufacturing that confusion. Gaslighting does not start with screaming. It starts with small denials that make your memory feel slippery. 1 minute, something happened clearly. Then suddenly you are defending reality like it needs witnesses. That is the trap. They do the thing, then attack your confidence in seeing it. And if you are conscientious, empathetic, and always willing to reflect, you are easier to bend. Because you do not want to be unfair. You will question yourself before questioning manipulation. That is exactly why gaslighters love reasonable people. Reasonable people keep reopening cases already closed. And tonight, we are naming the phrases that turn certainty into fog without leaving fingerprints. Because once you hear what those lines really mean, they stop sounding powerful. They start sounding desperate, controlling, and weirdly predictable. That changes everything about how you respond. Maybe you already know this feeling. You leave a conversation replaying details like courtroom evidence. You remember the tone, the words, the look, the timing, the pressure in your chest. Then they say one sentence, and suddenly your certainty buckles under their calm face. Not because they proved anything, but because they made doubt feel more responsible than truth. And if you grew up around blame, guilt, or emotional unpredictability, this hits even deeper. You were trained to double-check yourself, soften your reactions, and keep the peace. So when someone says that never happened, your nervous system does not just hear words. It hears risk. It hears, maybe I am the problem again. Maybe I misread everything. First, listen for the classic line, I never said that. It sounds simple, almost harmless. But what it often means is, I said it, and now I need distance. Maybe they said it in anger. Maybe they said it privately. Maybe they regret exposure. So instead of owning the words, they erase the moment and make you prove it. Watch what happens next. You start quoting details while they stay emotionally relaxed and offended. That is not honesty. That is somebody using composure like camouflage while your confidence drains. Another favorite is, you were remembering it wrong. This one sounds almost charitable. It pretends to correct a misunderstanding, while quietly appointing them the authority over reality. Notice the structure. They are not discussing facts with you. They are grading your perception. And when someone gets to grade your perception, they get to escape accountability. Then there is the polished version. That is not what I meant. Sometimes that line is fair. People misspeak. Healthy people clarify without punishing you for hearing. But gaslighters use intent like bleach. They scrub away impact and accuse you of distortion. You are no longer talking about what happened. You are defending why it affected you. And now the original behavior disappears, while your reaction becomes the entire trial. They say, you always twist things, because general accusations are harder to disprove in real time. You cannot defend yourself against something that big without sounding even more defensive. That is why gaslighting loves blurry language. Blurry language creates endless room for retreat. You are too sensitive is another classic, and it works because everybody fears embarrassment. Nobody wants to be the person making a big deal out of nothing. So when they label your reaction instead of addressing their behavior, shame enters the room. And shame makes smart people abandon clear evidence just to avoid looking unreasonable. Sometimes they go softer. I think you were projecting. That one feels almost therapeutic. But in the wrong hands, psychological language becomes a weapon with a polite voice. They use insight vocabulary, not for truth, but for image control and moral superiority. Suddenly you are not hurt. You are insecure, triggered, unstable, dramatic, or impossible. That shift matters. Once your emotional response becomes the issue, their behavior escapes investigation completely. Another line you need to catch immediately is, you are making things up. That phrase is aggressive for a reason. It is meant to shock you off balance. It is not a misunderstanding. It is an attempt to make your reality sound fraudulent. And once you are busy proving you are not lying, they gain control of tempo. Control of tempo matters more than people realize. Whoever controls pace often controls perception. Gaslighters rush when you need reflection, and stall when you need resolution. They overwhelm the moment, then later claim you are obsessed for still bringing it up. Another phrase sounds innocent but lands like poison. Why are you making this such a big deal? What they mean is, your pain is inconvenient, and I need you to reduce it. They are not measuring reality, they are measuring how expensive your reaction feels to them. A healthy person may say, I did not realize it hit that hard. Then they listen. They might not love the conversation, but they stay in reality. A toxic person does something different. They act attacked because your clarity limits their freedom. That is an important distinction. Boundaries are not control even when controlling people call them cruel. Control tells others what they are allowed to feel, think, or choose. A boundary tells people what access they have to you and what happens next. Gaslighters hate that distinction because boundaries expose the truth without arguing it. You do not need a courtroom speech to say, "That does not work for me." You do not need a dissertation to say, "I already answered that." And you definitely do not need permission to say, "We are not doing this." Those phrases sound small, but manipulation feeds on openings, and explanations create openings. The more you explain, the more material they get to twist later. So one of the strongest nonverbal tools is this: pause, then say less. Do not race to fill silence after they deny something obvious again. Silence can be healthy, by the way. Not every quiet person is manipulating you. Sometimes people need space to cool down and think clearly first alone. Manipulative silence feels different. It is not space for regulation. It is punishment for resistance. It says, "Return to compliance, and I will return to warmth again." You have probably seen this with parents who go icy after one adult boundary. You say you cannot visit this weekend, and suddenly you are selfish, ungrateful, distant, changed. Notice what did not happen. They did not ask about your schedule, limits, or bandwidth. They treated your availability like a moral duty because access felt like entitlement. You see the same thing in relationships when someone says you were imagining things. Maybe they flirted openly, hid messages, shifted stories, or changed energy the second you noticed. You bring up the pattern, and suddenly you are paranoid instead of perceptive. That accusation is useful to them because it isolates you from your own instincts. If you cannot trust your instincts, you keep returning to them for interpretation. Independence is the hidden prize in most gaslighting dynamics for them. At work, it can sound smoother, smarter, and even more dangerous there. A boss gives vague instructions, changes expectations later, then says you were told already. Or a coworker smiles in meetings, then privately says you misunderstood their harmless comment. Now you are defending your professionalism, while they protect their image through plausible innocence. That is why fake calm can be so destabilizing. Tone is not truth. Some of the most manipulative lines arrive in the softest voice possible. And some of the most honest responses sound brief, flat, and unimpressed. You do not need to match their performance. You need to protect your grip on facts. That can sound like, "Here is what I heard and here is my decision." Or, "We remember it differently, and I am still not agreeing to that." Or even, "I am not debating my experience with you today again." Notice those phrases do not beg for validation. They anchor you instead. And that matters, because gaslighting gets weaker when it cannot pull you into proving mode. Here is what most people miss. Gaslighting is not always calculated like some evil master plan. Sometimes the person is emotionally immature, allergic to shame, and desperate to avoid being wrong. They may lie to themselves first, then hand you the lie with conviction. That does not make it harmless. It just tells you strategy matters more than lectures. Not every difficult person is toxic, but repeated reality twisting is never a small issue. You can survive rudeness. You can survive moodiness. Chronic distortion attacks your internal compass. And when your internal compass gets attacked enough, you start outsourcing judgment everywhere. You ask friends to confirm obvious disrespect. You reread messages like forensic evidence. You rehearse conversations alone because you keep trying to find the exact mistake. Often the mistake was simple. You expected honesty from someone invested in avoiding accountability. And that is why clarity feels so powerful. It stops making their motives your homework. You do not need to decode every twist before protecting yourself from it. Sometimes the correct response is not insight. It is distance, documentation, and a shorter answer. If it is family, that may mean fewer personal details and firmer time limits. If it is work, that may mean email follow-ups and clear written agreements. If it is a partner or ex, that may mean arguing less and observing more. Gaslighters often reveal themselves most clearly after you stop over-explaining everything. Because explanations feel like negotiation, and manipulators hear negotiation as possible access. But a calm, brief answer sounds like a locked door to them. No exposes entitlement faster than arguments do, especially when you do not decorate it. Not this time exposes expectation. I am not available for that, exposes assumed ownership. My answer is the same, exposes repetition as pressure instead of genuine discussion. And watch the backlash, because backlash is information when words are slippery. Anger can mean loss of control. Guilt trips can mean loss of access. Silent treatment can mean punishment, disguised as distance. Smear campaigns can mean image control. And you changed often means you stopped being easy to use anymore. That line hurts because part of you remembers when closeness felt real. But access without respect is not closeness. It is convenience wearing affection. Read that again in your life. The person may miss your usefulness, not your presence. That is why some people act heartbroken only after your boundaries become consistent. They were comfortable when you were reachable, forgiving, flexible, and easy to redirect. Now they call you cold, difficult, rude, selfish, distant, or impossible suddenly. Healthy people may feel disappointed by your limit, but they can still respect it. Toxic people treat your limit like betrayal because it interrupts the arrangement they preferred. And once you see that, their script stops feeling personal and starts feeling tactical. You stop asking, why are they saying this? And ask, what does this do? Does it erase evidence? Does it shame me? Does it pull me into defending reality? That question changes everything because manipulation depends on you treating words at face value. Start treating words like behavior. Start reading function, not just content, carefully. Then phrases that once pierced you begin to sound thin and familiar. I never said that start sounding like retreat. You are too sensitive sounds like deflection. You are remembering it wrong sounds like control. Why make this huge sounds like avoidance? And once you hear the pattern, you stop swallowing every sentence whole. You begin checking your body, your notes, the timeline, the repeated behavior. You trust the accumulated pattern over the isolated excuse they offer today. Because manipulation survives in moments, but truth survives in patterns over time. If you need one rule, let it be this: confusion is already information. Especially when the other person always seems clear only after hurting you. Real misunderstandings usually create repair. Manipulation creates fog, blame, repetition, and your exhaustion. And no, being empathetic does not require you to abandon your own evidence. You can be fair and still say, that is not how I experienced it. You can be calm and still say, I am not discussing this further. You can love someone and still stop handing them the knife of explanation. You can need the job and still document every shifting conversation carefully. You can stay polite and still become much harder to manipulate now. Because your power is not in winning every argument, it is in keeping yourself. Keeping your memory, keeping your standards, keeping your pace, keeping your self-respect. That is the quiet power gaslighters cannot stand. You stop volunteering your confusion. You stop translating their behavior into innocence just because they say it calmly. You stop arguing with what your body already knows is true today. And maybe that is the deepest shift here. You do not need perfect proof first. You need enough honesty with yourself to stop betraying your own perception. If this hit close, think about the phrase that kept trapping you longest. Put it in the comments or keep it private and answer it differently next time. And if you want more language for protecting your peace without drama, stay close. The moment you stop doubting what happened, their favorite weapon starts failing.